Hey everybody, I'm here with my friends Liz and Ryan, and we're out in Virginia, right?
You got it?
Yes, we're in Virginia. We're on their homestead, and so they're going to be showing us around and showing us some of their experience of what it's like for them doing country living, growing some of their own food, and just the experience with their family out here. So how long have you guys been living here on this property?
So on this property, we moved here right about a couple years ago. We had been looking for a place a little farther out. We had a place with 4 acres and we're happy there, but we also wanted to be closer to family. And so this popped up online and we came to see it the next day and kind of fell in love with it.
Well, it had all the flat land that we could grow on easily, which was a huge sell. It had water, it had springs, a couple creeks, and just it had great potential for us. We wanted to put in a bigger garden and orchard and work at becoming more self-sustainable, and it had a great layout for that. Yeah. So we felt like God handed it to us, really. We'd been praying and looking for the last year, and here it was.
So we were able to buy 16 acres, but my parents bought the adjoining 20 acres, and so it's worked out well where we have kind of most of our 16 acres is all open, but what they have is all mostly wooded. So we've got kind of the combination of it, and especially with our 3 young kids, it'll be nice having grandma and grandpa just right a few yards away.
Oh, for sure. And with your land here, I mean, you have enough land to grow way more than everything you would need for your family.
Sure.
I mean, you could sell plenty of food by using some of this land. It's a beautiful spot you have.
Yeah,
thanks.
We love it. It's a little taste of heaven.
Yeah, it really is. So we're going to show you around and give you a little idea of what it looks like around here and some of the things that they do on their property. So let's go have a look.
So we're out in front of the house now in the kind of the main field where we do most of the gardening and orcharding and whatnot for right now anyways. Over here is more kind of the vegetable garden. Liz kind of spends most of the time in the vegetable garden. I tend to venture out into the blueberries and apples a bit more, but of course we're all doing it together. But
I call those Ryan's babies. I look out the window and he's out there checking out his trees and his blueberries. He comes inside and tells me when they're all blooming and budding out. So this has become his area and the garden's mine.
Meanwhile, when we're working out here, we often have the kids playing over with the chickens at the chicken coop over there by the woodshed. They're usually pretty happy chasing chickens around while we're working outside. But of course we recruit especially the older one to help us out with various projects.
Mm-hmm. And then we've got way up on the hill up there, we're starting to get ready to put in an orchard. We fertilized already for it, but we've got some figs up there, a couple pawpaws, some elderberry, and we want to put in some hardy kiwi as well.
And next year we're going to actually plant some apples, pears, and peaches. So hopefully have some more variety of the different fruits that we can.
And you actually just got muscadines. They showed up in the mail yesterday, so we're going to put in a trellis this next week for muscadines and transplant some tayberries and propagate some more wineberries that are growing naturally in the woods. Apparently they're an invasive species, but they turn out a wonderful kind of seedy raspberry, but they don't have pests. So we're trying to grow some naturally here, which it's working out well, so we're going to put a trellis up for those this next week.
We got them growing just around the property, so we managed to just dig some of the small ones up, plant them in a row, and they did great last year, and they're even a lot bigger this year, so we're anxious to see what we get off of it.
You can see the guineas and the chickens over there, and they're helping with all of our pest control. We're hoping that we'll have less pests this year. So not only are they great pets for the kids, but trying out the poultry route as well to see if we can help manage some of that stuff.
Yeah. Some of my coworkers think I'm a little bit silly anyways, being a vegan, vegetarian couple here that are taking care of chickens and don't really use the eggs very much, so it's
but we like their fertilizer, so.
Exactly. And then on top of the chickens and guineas, we also have the ducks over in the pond over that direction. They are mostly just fun for the kids to feed, but I guess they help maybe keep the mosquito control a little bit, being that we have that body of water there. And honestly, they venture out as much as the chickens do and are constantly digging.
They're all over this field with their little beaks down just walking along, so I'm assuming they're getting pests as well, so we can hope.
Yeah. So we're in the blueberry patch. We planted these last year, got 45 blueberries, I believe it is. 4 different types. There's 2 in this row, and then each one of these rows is a different kind. I believe they're all high bush varieties. Blueberries can come with basically northern or southern high bush, as well as rabbit eye are kind of the three broad categories. Rabbit eyes, I guess, tend to grow a little bit better. I think more southern. We're kind of in between a little bit, but the kind we got all grow well in zone 7, which is where we are here in Virginia.
And obviously they're still small, so we don't have results to show for that yet, but they're starting to look really good and putting on good growth.
Yep, planted last year, and there were a few berries that came off, but you're really not supposed to really pick too many of them or let too many, I guess, grow over the first couple years, just to let the plant have time to really develop. One thing you'll see is just the weed cover that we're using. Last year we started out with just kind of a mulch cover, and that worked generally pretty well, but we just have the weather and climate here where weeds are such a problem that
it's grass,
it's a constant battle.
It grows in really, really bad, and we can't get it out.
So.
And it was going to choke out the berries.
So we got a weed fabric that will let water get through. Now there is irrigation underneath each one of these that we can set up on a timer if there's a dry spell or whatnot. But if it's raining, the water will get through the fabric, but it keeps the weeds down.
That's one thing you have to be careful with getting weed barrier. There is some weed barrier that will not let the water get through.
Unlike the garden where we have to tear up the fabric every year, this is something where we actually have 2 layers of fabric, one on each side, and kind of have it cross over top.
The paver's holding it down. That way we can pull this back and fertilize every spring, add the nutrients that it needs.
And then kind of zip it back shut, more or less.
We have a lot of wind, so you have to keep the pavers on it, on the edges as well as here.
Which we did the pavers to help hold the ground cover in place. We get a lot of wind through this valley here. And we did the same kind of way that we did with the garden.
This makes it, Ryan put the pavers down and then drove over it with the tractor, and it just pushed them into the ground in some wet weather. And then now we're able to mow right up to the edge. We have 3 kids, and so anything that's time saving as far as weed eating, and mowing, with all these fields, we have to try to figure out how to time save with that so you can spend time doing other stuff.
But we're looking forward to some good blueberries. We've got Chandlers in this row, Ricas here, and then Daros and Patriots are in that row. So be anxious to try some hopefully this year.
We have them high mounded because we are in a high water table, and blueberry roots don't like to be in a lot of water. So that's what the mounds are for. I'm sure over time that they'll slowly break down, but hopefully they have a better, more solid root system by then, and they'll be able to handle it.
So you'll see that the same kind of thing with the apples, at least down in this field. We've mounted it up some just so that they have a little bit more space before they reach down in that water table. We're still in the front field here, just looking at where we planted some apples. These apple trees were all planted early last spring. Bare root. We ordered them online, and 2 different places, but we have 4 different apples. This is a section of our red apples, the others being more our yellow or green apples. The 4 kinds we have are Gold Rush, Sundance, and then right now we're in front of the Enterprise apples, and then Arkansas Black down there. Not necessarily the most common names that you hear. Some may have heard of those, Arkansas Black being a little bit more popular, but we're trying to minimize how much spraying we have to do, and again, with the climate of Virginia, we certainly can face a lot of different diseases. So all of those apples are going to be scab resistant, so that's one less thing to worry about.
We also have a lot of cedar trees.
Cedar trees, so 3 of the 4 kinds are resistant to cedar apple rust. Unfortunately, we're already seeing signs of it on the Gold Rush, but generally they're holding up pretty well. Now, certainly see that these apple trees don't really look like your typical setup for one. It's called espalier or espalier, basically where we're training it almost like you would grapes or such as it's on a trellis here.
Easy to pick, easy to prune.
Exactly,
especially at the kids' height.
Yep, the kids can come out here and hopefully pick some off rather easily. So we started with the bare root, planted them. It was about this tall to begin with, but I clipped it down here. You can see the base.
Which is really painful to do when your tree's 4 feet high, to clip it down to 2 feet.
Yeah, it felt like the wrong thing to do, but it worked pretty well. So once you clip it, it forces that growth out from just below where that clipping was. And so I took the 3 best shoots from that spot where I clipped and trained one each direction horizontally, and then let one go as the main part of the tree going up. And so now we see this year where I've got 3 more popping up that soon enough I'll let these get just a couple inches longer and start letting them train along this rod until we get to the top one, and eventually, hopefully by the end of next year, we'll see that this whole thing will have a branch going each direction. So it's keeping it all, I guess, more of a 2D shape as opposed to letting it just grow out into the aisles. It'll allow them to get plenty of sunlight, but again, just makes it easier for picking, and it's kind of a unique look. Yeah, we wanted to kind of explore with the fun of it.
One of the things that we did was we put in cedar posts so that there wasn't anything treated in the ground. And then these are the metal fencing, right?
Yep, for chain link fence.
For chain link fence. And able to just hook what length do they come in?
I believe they're 10 foot.
10 footers, so you had to cut some of them. Drilled holes through and then hooked them together. It's just super stable so that you don't have your posts. When you're using the wire and pulling in on the posts, one of the problems we've had before is that you get the wood bending in with the tension, or you have to do something at the end to keep the tension out. And this was one way that there wouldn't be any tension on any of the posts and give something stable for them to grow on. You could do wire with this method, but again, we get a lot of wind and they needed something really strong to be hooked to. So they wouldn't be.
A lot of wind, and with 3 kids, they like to climb on things.
Climb everything,
so, yeah.
Which they still climb this. But one of the other things we've added here with the apple trees is bird houses on the ends of all the cedar posts, trying to get the birds to come in and help with pest management again. So whatever we can do to try to get all the little wrens and bluebirds to come into this area, we're trying to do. So putting up birdhouse is a good way to do that.
Yep.
Plus the kids love peeking in on them.
One of the things we knew we were going to encounter is deer pressure for the garden, the orchard. There's no shortage of deer where we live. And a lot of this has been trial and error for us as far as learning what we want to do, how we want it to look. At our last house, we had a decent sized garden as well, and
it looked like a prison.
it did. It was a metal fence that went over 6 foot high, and
that didn't work, so we added another foot of wire on top of that.
And it just became a bit of an eyesore. So we were trying to figure out, well, what can we do to keep the deer out? And it was either do something right up against each row and each section and then around the garden itself. But ultimately what I came across was this 3D deer fence idea, and it's really worked quite well for us. So it's not that tall. It's 5 to 6 feet tall, going all the way around. So the idea is that there's 2 layers. They're about 3 feet apart. So the wood fence was already here. We just attached one wire that goes along the outside, and then 3 feet in we have these, they look like T-posts, and we had the 4 strands across that. The key is having the top one a little higher than the one in front. And the idea is, even though a deer could easily jump this, they won't. Something to do with the depth perception, that when they see it, they just get concerned, worried that they're going to get trapped in between it, and they just won't jump it. And so since putting it up, we haven't seen any deer come inside.
In fact, they just kind of leave this whole area alone. And I think part of that was when we first put up the electric fence on the outside of the wooden fence, we attached little metal bottle caps to it and put a little scent, like a little apple scent in it on a cotton ball, and attached it to it. So they would come up and lick that and they would get shocked on their tongue, which I'm sure sent them flying in the middle of the night.
That's torture.
So I think they probably all learned real good lessons real quick. And they just don't even come to this area. They'll be out in that field, but they don't come over here at all.
Right. Now, certainly one of the drawbacks is you've got grass that's going to grow between it. So we do have a push mower that we will push in between the two, but fortunately
and we have to do that once a week.
Yeah, once a week, but it's only along really one side and the front. The rest of it's kind of overshadowed by some wood, so it doesn't really grow much grass there. But it is more to weed eat around and to push mow between.
More to maintain.
But if I was to do it again, there's no question I would do it the same way. It's really worked well for us.
Well, what's nice is it allows us to expand in this field, and we aren't constricted by a fence. So the entire field is fenced in. So if we want to plant more trees or more berries, we can keep expanding out and filling this area. But if it was a dedicated fence, then you're locked in and stuck.
And it's not just been for the deer. We have the chicken coops, so the chickens and guineas, they all stay within this fence as well, at least overnight. And so far, they've really done pretty well too.
The bears haven't gotten any.
The bears haven't gotten in.
Our neighbors have gotten, the bears attacked their chickens, so I'm assuming that it's helping with that as well.
Yeah. So far, so good.
Yeah.